He exposed the government's shocking abuse of power in real time. Senator calls out the DOJ's deliberate attack on people of faith, using law enforcement as a political tool. What's been hidden from the public? The truth will be revealed. Stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as the State Attorney General for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bond.
What you just witnessed was a monumental moment of accountability in action. This wasn't just another Senate hearing. It was a direct challenge to the current political system that has weaponized the justice system for its own agenda. The testimony that just unfolded didn't merely highlight an isolated incident. It exposed a pattern of targeting religious organizations and pro-life Americans under the guise of justice. But why? What's really going on behind the scenes? Why were churches and pregnancy care centers subjected to violent attacks while the DOJ sat idly by, doing absolutely nothing to protect these Americans? This was not an oversight. It was deliberate negligence. Hundreds of churches and centers were firebombed, and yet the Department of Justice failed to act. When those responsible for this egregious failure were questioned, they couldn't even provide an explanation because there was no investigation. There's no question here. The injustice is clear, and the question we must ask is why the government protected those committing these crimes. The statistics are staggering. Over 100 pregnancy centers and 300 churches were destroyed or attacked, with no serious consequences for the perpetrators. But when it came to pro-life demonstrators, a SWAT team was deployed, terrorizing families. Why is there such a glaring double standard? The DOJ, under the leadership of Merrick Garland, used its full force to intimidate peaceful protesters, but when it came to violent attacks on faith-based organizations, nothing happened. Does this sound like justice to you? Does this sound like the America we've been promised? The answer is no. And what's worse is that it's not just a few rogue individuals. This is a systemic issue. One of the most shocking revelations came when we uncovered the FBI's memo targeting Catholic churches. This wasn't just some mistake or one rogue field office. This was a deliberate and coordinated effort to spy on Catholic parishes, infiltrating their communities with undercover agents. The FBI's actions were a direct assault on the First Amendment. The very fact that the FBI would go so far as to use its resources to infiltrate religious organizations simply because of their faith is un-American. And the response from the Department of Justice? A lie. When former officials were asked about this, they claimed that it was the work of just one field office. But we know now that multiple field offices were involved. They lied to the American people, and it was only through the courage of a whistleblower that this scandal was exposed. This should outrage every single one of us. These actions not only go against the very core values that this country was built on, but they also show the extent to which the government has allowed itself to be hijacked by political motives. The DOJ and FBI used their power to go after citizens who expressed pro-life beliefs, but refused to protect people whose faith and beliefs were under attack. Let that sink in. How could an organization that is supposed to protect Americans instead be targeting them for their religious views? This is not just a matter of political difference. This is about using the government to punish its own citizens. And yet, in the face of such evidence, what does the Biden administration do? They continue to turn a blind eye to these abuses. They ignore the reality that under their watch, religious Americans were attacked and their constitutional rights were violated. But there's hope. There are those in Congress and in leadership positions like Ms. Bondi who are determined to end the weaponization of the DOJ. They are committed to putting a stop to this outrageous behavior and ensuring that those responsible for these abuses are held accountable. The truth is clear, and the American people deserve answers. This isn't just a political issue. This is a fight for the soul of this nation. We are witnessing the erosion of our freedoms, and it's up to each of us to stand up, speak out, and demand change. We cannot allow those in power to keep silencing those they disagree with. We cannot allow these abuses to go unchecked, and we cannot let the DOJ or FBI turn their backs on the very citizens they are meant to protect. This is a call to action. It's time for us to take back our government and hold those in power accountable. The first step in that process is sharing this video with everyone you know. It's time to let the truth be heard. Subscribe, stay loud, and demand answers. We will not be silenced. We need real change at the Justice Department. We need leadership that defends all Americans, regardless of their faith or beliefs. And we need a system that holds everyone accountable, no matter how powerful they are. We must not let this go unchallenged. The future of our democracy depends on it.